Welcome to the lesson recording for week 7. And you can see that week 7 we move into what's called Unit 9. It's electronic communication. And week 7 will cover sections 1 through 4 only. And of course it's broken down like you usually do for Tuesday. You're watching this recording, do the write-up. Section about email do's and don'ts. Of course you're going to skip the discussion assignment. And then an idea about once on the internet it's there forever. Then there's something called Project 2 that you'll do. Now I want to go down and look at Project 1. I must have gotten rid of Project 1, so this you just have Project 2 assignment. So really not an awful lot of work for this week, so it'll give you a chance to get caught up. Now speaking of getting caught up, let's take a look at a few things. Look ahead. Week 8, your continuing electronic communications unit, sections 5 and 6. Also, starting to talk about the end of the course. Getting close. No revisions after May 31st, and all the work needs to be in by June 4th. So just a little bit of information as you think ahead of what you need to do. And of course, the last week in the course, I talk more about what you need to do to pass the class. So we're concentrating on week 7. And I'll go ahead and move on down, and we'll get right into this. So first thing we always want to do, of course, is look at the Class Connect write-up. And the first thing, what are 4 ways to communicate electronically? So that's going to be in section 1, so we want to make sure we have that in our minds. So electronic communications. And of course, you're doing as a teenager these days, your communications is a lot different than like people my age. I do a lot with email, you guys do a lot with texting. So it's a little bit differently. But many ways to communicate. You can see there's electronic mail, blogs, web pages, instant messaging. So those are just 4 ways. And then there are other telephone apps that you guys use. So of course this doesn't even mention texting because it's fairly new compared to when this class was built. But certainly you put texting in at the end of this whole list. Emails, do's and don'ts. Let's go to the write-up. When did email start and what was its purpose? Since email is so easy to send, what are the 3 risks with sending email? Explain how BCC works, and what is an emoticon? So we'll keep those things in mind. So email, or electronic mail. So we're going to look at some do's and don'ts of email. So how to use an electronic mail application, use the internet safely and legally, identify appropriate uses of electronic mail. So electronic mail, sending messages in electronic form, usually via computers, came out about 1965. It was for mainframe computer users. They began to leave messages for one another. So it was on these big mainframes that colleges and universities had, and scientific labs and such, and they would leave messages for one another. So that's how electronic mail started. You can see there was electronic mail, then you have to have a client, or you have to have the email possibility. Now, of course, down here, these are ones that are standalone, like on your computer, but many of you work with web-based clients, so you might use Gmail or Yahoo Mail or something like that. So that's what's called web-based. But these are some of the other email client programs that are out there. So when you talk about email, a lot of people think that when they send an email, it's an email received. Well, obviously, if you have an urgent message, it's probably best to call them or text them rather than emailing them, right? Because email, people don't check their email as much as they used to. So some risks with email, sending is easy. You can send it to many people at one time. Of course, a letter, you'd have to write it first, then print, then put it in an envelope. So you can always take back your words in a letter, but an email, you really can't take back your words once you send it. So it's easy to send something that's not thought out carefully, easy to send something that's not well written, and it's easy to offend someone. And so there's some of the hazards of email, and certainly the hazards of text too, right? Because texts are automatic. I mean, if you sent an email to somebody and you didn't want them to read it, you could call them or text them and say, hey, please don't read that email, please delete that email. But on a text, that's automatic, isn't it? Different ways to send. So there are three fields when you do an email. The to, which is to the people directly. CC, which means carbon copy. CC is carbon copy, and of course that's left over from old time with typewriters, where you had a piece of carbon paper between 2 sheets of paper, and when you typed on the front sheet of paper, it would transfer through the carbon onto the second sheet, so you'd have a duplicate. And this would be, if you wanted everybody to see the same message. But then finally, BCC is for people to see the message, but then they don't see everybody else who gets it. So I often do that in Kmail. I'll do it BCC. When I'm sending an email, maybe I have 10 students that are failing a class. I'll do a BCC, and then they don't know who else is getting that message. So that's what BCC is used for. And you can see that some of the ideas down here about why you would use certain things. Reply versus reply all. Of course, many times if I send a blanket email out to a bunch of students, and then one of the students sends reply all and says, "Hey, Mr. Harrison, you're the worst teacher I've ever seen, blah, blah, blah. I really hate your class. I really hate the way you do things." Well, everybody in the reply all is going to see that. So you really need to be careful between using reply and reply all. And a lot of stuff I do, I hate when people send reply all when they're just replying to me. That shows that they're not being careful of what they're doing. Using punctuation, formatting, other emphasis. You don't want to use all caps in an email. And all text, in texting, you don't want to use all caps. It's like you're hollering. I know in email and certainly in texting, a lot of people don't use punctuation that they should because you just want to send a quick message. So I think we've gotten away from some of that, the way you should communicate properly. And you can see down at the bottom, the last thing, good email are concise and professional. So here's an example of a bad email. So you can see what that person's done in this bad email down here. Other things to avoid in email. Sometimes jokes are, people don't get the jokes, sarcasm, because they can't see your facial expressions and things like that. So you just need to be careful in types of messages you send. And of course, this talks about email, but certainly it goes with text messaging too. When you text somebody, they're not going to get the jokes that you're sending possibly. And certainly you guys use a lot of slang when you're doing texting and lots of abbreviations. Emoticon. So emoticon is a graphic icon intended to signify some sort of emotion. You use it as text when you text or when you email. Of course, you guys have used emoticons for a long time, haven't you? Look at this. The first one was in 1857, so 150 years ago. And there was the number 73 meant love and kisses in Morse code. So kind of interesting, isn't it? How long something like that has been around. Spam, what spam is, it's, you used to describe junk mail, but lots of times spam is things that is sent out to hundreds or thousands or more people at a time. That's why it's called spam. And certainly in your email you probably get spam. I imagine there is texting spam these days. You get things like that. So just be careful of things that you get from people you don't know. How to handle spam, of course, never reply to it. You can set up spam filters in your email program. And also don't send email that's considered spam. So, don't send an email to 200 people or all the people in your mailing list, in your contact list. Because lots of programs, if they see mail being sent to lots of people at the same time, they will mark it as spam. So the summary, we looked at guidelines for formatting and the style of email communications using 2CC and BCC, reply versus reply all, emoticons, and spam. Discussion, we're skipping this discussion, so don't worry about that. Okay, now we'll move on to section 3. Let's go back to the Class Connect write-up. So of course, when an email starts, we talked about that. Since email is so easy, what are the 3 risks of sending email? How BCC works, I talked about that. And what is an emoticon? I discussed that too. Section 3, what are 2 important things to keep in mind when sending email? An example of how a company may use a web page cookie. So once on the internet, it's always on the internet, right? It's there forever, so be careful. Same thing, with texting. I mean, once you text somebody something, if you send somebody a picture or you post something on Facebook, even though you can delete it off of Facebook, other people may have already taken the picture and taking it from your Facebook account. So there are all kinds of things. So you really need to be careful with electronic communications and privacy. This goes far beyond just talking about email and posting things on the internet. So we're going to look at learning how to use the internet safely, explore challenges and social issues with the internet. So email is permanent. So once you send it to somebody, they have that forever. They can share it with other people. So you really need to be careful. Same with texting, right? Once you send a text to somebody, they can go ahead and send that to other people. Once you post things to Facebook, people can share things like that. So it's really important to be cognizant, to think about some of the messages that you send and things that you post. So, think of something you wrote last week on an email or text or whatever. And of course, this says on MySpace webpage, but not many people use that anymore. But now if you go 10 years from now, would you like your future employer to see it? Would you like your future spouse to see it? Would you like your kids to see it? So if you post a picture of you partying or something, and it's not a very good way to put yourself out there, you'll be embarrassed by it. If your mom sees it, well, then don't do it. So be careful about what you blog. Of course, this talks about blogging, and most of you probably don't do blogging, but this could be very similar to be careful what you Facebook. And you can see what this talks about, something that a blogger posted. But be careful when you Facebook, when you post that way. Employer access. Should your future employer read your personal information? Maybe not, but employers and people who, if you're applying for college scholarships, or if you're hoping to go to college and you're applying just to a college, applying for a job, all kinds of things, they can go look at your Facebook page. And what's on your Facebook page, that's the real you. And if you want people to think that that's the real you, or if you want people to think that that you're a partier and you do this and that, then that's what you put on Facebook. If you want people to think that you're a smart student and that you have good friends around you, then that's what your Facebook should look like. So cookies. Cookies is some text that is stored on the computer and used by a website to track how you use the website. So businesses can do this. So businesses, when you go visit their website, and you see down here, company can use cookies to see what web pages that contain the advertisement has to be visited. So when you visit a company's website, it can put a cookie on your computer, and the company knows that you particularly came to visit their website. So that's how a company can use cookies. So in summary, think twice before you publish something. And I would say think twice before you text something, think twice before you post something to Facebook. Those are the more modern things we need to think about. So if your Facebook or your text, you just want one person to see it, then you better not Facebook it or text it, right? Because it can be shared out. Be careful of things you send in haste or without thinking. And this says, of course, blog entry or comments or forum posts, but that would mean things you put on Facebook or things that you text. It's hard to take them back. So that's section 3. Now we're going to move to section 4, but we'll go look at the write-up first. So 2 important things to keep in mind when sending email. We've talked about that. Example, how a company may use web page cookie. Talked about that too. Section 4, what does memory hierarchy mean? How many times larger is a megabyte than a kilobyte? What is the relationship between image size and file size? So file size, it does matter, the size of the images, the size of your files. And we're talking about the actual data size, not the size that a picture looks on your screen, but the size of the data in kilobytes or megabytes. And of course the issue is, if you're trying to email something to someone, email a picture, large pictures don't go through email very easily. And there are probably some things with Facebook, there are probably some issues too. You have to have small file sizes. So we're going to look at electronic mail applications, internet safely legally, digital storage, and managing data. Any types of storage. Or the memory hierarchy, which means the different ways that information can be stored. So really what memory hierarchy means is that there are multiple ways to store data. So of course data can be stored on CDs, data can be made into MP3 files, and then be played on your MP3 player. So, just depending on the use of the information, what you're doing with it is going to determine the hierarchy or how you're going to store that information. Bits and bytes. All data comes in bits and bytes, ones and zeros, combinations of ones and zeros. And that's so computers, they see things as ones and zeros, and then computers translate them into the words and such. So byte is 8 bits. So this goes, there's 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. So those first 8 characters right here, that's called a byte, B-Y-T-E, like megabyte, kilobyte. Like the word hello is 5 bytes, 1 byte for each letter. And then when you talk about storage, a long time ago, bytes like 64,000 bytes, that would be 64 kilobytes or 64 KB. That was thought to be huge. Now, of course, we're talking about things in megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes. So if you think about this, there, as this says, 2 definitions for kilobytes. Kilobytes, you sort of have in your mind, kilo means 1,000, so kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. But really, 1,024 bytes is really a kilobyte. But you can kind of think of it in thousands if you want to. So this is going to say 1 kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. So 1,000 bytes is 1 kilobyte. 1,000,000 bytes is a megabyte. Then 1,000,000,000 bytes is a gigabyte. So you can see here that if a kilobyte is 1,000 bytes and a megabyte is 1,000,000 bytes, then a megabyte is 1,000 times more than a kilobyte. So megabyte's 1,000 times more than a kilobyte. Now, hard drive capacity. When I first started using computers, which was about 1989 or 1990, 40 megabytes of hard disk space cost me $1,200. Really, really expensive. And of course, the costs are coming way, way down. I mean, here's a 500 gigabyte in 2008 hard drive for $100. You can see that less than a penny per megabyte. Now I can get an 8 gig thumb drive, 8 gigabytes thumb drive for about $4 or $5. So it's amazing how the prices have come down. And that's actually a picture of a hard drive. You can see the different layers of the hard drive. Now, the hard drives are quite a bit different these days. That was the old mechanical one. They're much more electronic and have far fewer pieces that can go wrong. So why file size is important? Because if your files are too large, it's very hard to email them. Sometimes it might take you forever to email something. But it's also important, like when you're texting pictures and things like that to people, if your pictures are small enough in bytes, then it will text much easier, and people can open it on the other end much easier. Now, to look at file size, the easiest way to do it, you go into a program. So here's somebody's folder, and then all you have to do is just right-click on that file and choose Properties, and that'll tell you the size of the file. But you can also see the size of the file is right next to the names of lots of programs. But I like going here because I can see more information about it. Also, if I click on Folders, and I can click on my folder to see how large the files are. Just right-click on the folder and choose Properties. So right-click on a file, select Properties, you can see the sizes. And you can see that it talks about the size, the file size and the size on the disk, but they're almost always the same. So here's case study 1, so a couple of case studies to think about. And this is email from Outlook, paste into Word. So it starts talking about some of the actual way you want to think about file size. Now, image resolution, image size, image resolution, this is really important. So if you look down here, the full resolution is overkill. I mean, computers, screens don't show things very well. You really don't need full resolution. So you can see down here, this is 50 by 50 pixels, this is 100 by 100, so obviously the 100 by 100 is much more clear. So those are some things to think about, but of course this one is going to take up twice the file size as this one. So there's a trade-off between file size and the resolution that you want people to see your image as. An image in PowerPoint. So This one, you have a PowerPoint, and then you go ahead and put an image in. So you create the PowerPoint, enter title and the name. View the file's property. It's probably going to be about 10 KB. Now insert a 3 megabyte picture, and then save it, and then look at the size. And then you're going to be seeing some changes in the file size. So that's an important way to see how files work. And you're going to do an activity very similar to this later on. You're going to turn it in. Now, fixing the file size problem. So you can right-click on the picture in PowerPoint, format picture, and then you can compress the picture. So that makes it much smaller. So you can see right here in this example, picture went from 3 megabytes to 30 kilobyte. That's about, 1,000 times smaller. So then would make your PowerPoint slideshow much smaller, which could be sent over the internet and things like that, stored easier, etc. So reducing the size of images. So you can see how you can use programs like Photoshop and others to reduce file size of pictures. Compression. Compression is where it squeezes things together. And this is a really good example. Like this, look at how many characters this is. 24 characters. And then look around here, this is 5 characters. So that's sort of an idea about compression. And there are a couple of different types of compression. There's lossless and then lossy compression. And I wouldn't worry too much about this stuff, but just this does a lot with music, but just keep in your mind that compression is a great way to make files smaller, and you can do it with zipping programs. So the final summary: how to determine file size of document, pitfalls of sending data, how to reduce the file size, and what data compression is. So now what you're going to do, the project for this, you're going to work through this, and let me go through this so you know exactly what to do it. You'll analyze the data size of a PowerPoint presentation as you experiment with images. Follow these steps below. Note the size of the file after each step. Generate a table in Excel similar to this. So what you'll do, here's what I would do. I would highlight all of this, and then I would paste that into an Excel document. So let's see if I can show you an example. So I highlight all that. Then I'll just put it down here, Control V. Let's see how I brought that in. So here I have, there it is. I have this in the Excel document. And of course I want to fix this a little bit, make my rows smaller and things like that, but go ahead and fix it. So step one, create a PowerPoint file, enter the name on the first page, and then save your file, so save it. Then go look at the file size and put that in here. Then add an extra slide and put a piece of clip art on slide 2, save it, put the file size in here, what your PowerPoint file looks like. Right here, resize the clip art to make it very small, save it, see what size it is, put the size in there. Oops. So you can see the different steps you go through here. Right here, you're going to add a slide, use the drawing tool, create a diagram. What size is it? Add an image, try to find a large image, 2 megabyte. What size is your PowerPoint file now? Then compress the image, then save your whole file, and what size is it now? So then you'll take this and you'll save this document. And you can just call it, doesn't give a name right there. You can just save that as Unit 9 Assignment 2. Just save that, and you'll send in that spreadsheet. So it shows all that information as you have tracked the size of your files. So if I go to look at the assignment sheet, you can see it's exactly what we just looked at. So really you're tracking file size changes as you do actual work. So that's kind of a cool activity, isn't it? So you'll turn in that assignment, and that's all you have for units 1 through 4. Let's go back to the write-up, make sure I answer the question. Memory hierarchy, we looked at that. How many times larger is a megabyte than a kilobyte? Talked about that. What is the relationship between image resolution and file size? So you have all those answers. So get the Class Connect write-up done, and you only have this Project 2 assignment. So I would say that this week's work between doing the write-up and the Project 2 assignment might take you an hour at the most. So in that case, you're going to have time to get more work done to catch up some of your old work. So that's all I have for you. I look forward to your work coming in, and I look forward to the makeup work coming in. Thanks, everybody. Bye.